In my 7th year at the brothel, the madam said I was too old and wanted to sell me off. My childhood sweetheart, whom I'd admired for years, came to redeem me, promising to take me as his concubine, but I flatly refused him. Using the private savings I'd accumulated over the years, I bought my freedom, opened a small medical clinic, and named it Xiao Xiao. My sisters were puzzled. You've admired Lord Pei for so long, why not accept? I smiled and said, a prostitute is sold to many, a concubine to just one. Either way, it's selling oneself. From now on, I just want to live well for myself, not sell myself anymore. On the night of the Lantern Festival, while enjoying the lanterns with my maidservant, I bumped into Julian Jiang buying a flower lantern for the woman beside him. She appeared about 16, with willow leaf eyebrows and high cheekbones, not strikingly beautiful, but rather delicate and refined. Yet her noble bearing clearly spoke of a pampered upbringing. The jeweled hairpieces she wore were all exquisite, unmistakably marking her as a young lady from a wealthy family. Julian Jiang bent down to hand the white rabbit lantern to the woman. The candlelight illuminated his refined and handsome face, and his starry cold eyes rippled with a warm smile, making the woman beside him gaze at him entranced. Her cheeks flushed. How rare. In front of me, Julian Jiang was always sarcastic and aloof, so he could be this gentle too. I stood watching for a long time, only approaching after the woman cheerfully went to the river to release the flower lantern. I stood beside Julian Jiang and asked, who is that young lady? Julian Jiang wasn't surprised by my presence and replied indifferently, Clarice Liu, the only daughter of the Minister of Revenue. He paused, then added, my fiancé, the Minister of Revenue, a second-rank official, oversees the entire Ministry of Revenue. He is also Julian Jiang's superior. I fell silent. The street was bustling with noise and endless streams of people, but all that liveliness felt distant, as if it had nothing to do with me. Then what about me? I asked. Julian Jiang finally turned his head to look at me. Those eyes, which moments ago had been as gentle as spring water, now shed their warmth, revealing the unyielding ice beneath. The corners of his lips curled slightly, carrying a condescending mockery. Lian Xiao, I cannot marry a courtesan. I lifted my head to meet his gaze, suddenly feeling a bit dazed. Lian Xiao is not my name. I am Serena Liu. Since childhood, Julian Jiang has always called me Serena, Serena. Even on our marriage certificate, it was written as Serena Liu. Lian Xiao is my stage name, given to me by the madam. Now, however, he calls me Lian Xiao, just like the other patrons. The name Serena Liu was given to me by my father. When my father named me, he said he hoped I would enjoy peace and health every year. Though I suppose he must be disappointed now. The year I turned 13, my family and the Jiangs were framed and our homes raided. My father risked his life to get me out. He told me to flee quickly, but I couldn't bear to leave Julian. So I wiped my tears and crawled through the dog hole in the Jiang's backyard to find him. The Liu and Jiang families were old friends. We grew up as childhood sweethearts, and our families had long since arranged our betrothal. I cried until my eyes could barely open, trembling with fear. But my first instinct was still that I couldn't abandon Julian Jiang. Later, I found Julian Jiang in the cellar, motionless with vacant eyes. I desperately dragged Julian Jiang out, followed the path my father had told me about to leave the city, and settled him in a dilapidated temple. Who would have thought that very night he developed a high fever and fell unconscious? Using the little money I had left, I found a barefoot doctor from a nearby village. He examined Julian Jiang and shook his head, saying, it's no use. To cure his illness, he needs ginseng, which costs at least 20 silver taels. You might as well spend a few dozen coins on a straw mat, wrap him up, and leave him on the mountain. We were penniless, with nothing to our names. Watching Julian Jiang's breathing grow shallow, his life fading away, I gritted my teeth, went to the brothel to offer myself, sold for 20 silver taels, and bought medicine for Julian Jiang. By the time Julian Jiang woke up, the madam had already given me the flower name Lian Xiao. That was the first time I cried for Julian Jiang. He didn't cry when his parents died tragically, nor when he was gravely ill. Yet his eyes reddened upon hearing Madame call me Lian Xiao. The 15-year-old boy clenched his jaw fiercely, like a cornered beast with no way out, gripping my hand tightly as tears streamed down his face. He pulled our marriage certificate from his chest and handed it to me, promising in a hoarse voice, "Wort be wort, and sway, I will redeem you. I will marry you." It feels like just yesterday, yet that was already 7 years ago. In these 7 years, I fell from an official's daughter to a prostitute, using the money earned as a prostitute to change Julian Zhang's name and fund his studies. After that, he was no longer called Julian Zhang. He is now Sean Pei. He passed as a county scholar, became a provincial scholar, and finally achieved top scholar. Then, he caught the emperor's favor and was named top scholar. He joined the Ministry of Revenue, instantly rising to prominence with a boundless future ahead. But he never mentioned marrying me again. "Who are you?" A woman's voice came from behind. I turned to see Clarice Liu, her expression suddenly turning wary upon recognizing my face. I was about to speak when she looked me up and down, curling her lips into a scornful sneer. "I know you, the courtesan from the House of Wishes. Your name is Lian Xiao, isn't it? I've always heard you've been pestering young Master Pei, and it seems it's true. How dare someone like you, ridden by 1,000 men and pillowed by 10,000, show your face in public? You have no shame." The Minister of Revenue had suffered an injury in his youth, and past 50, he had only this one daughter, whom he undoubtedly doted on excessively. Clarice Liu's arrogance was notorious throughout the capital. Unwilling to argue with her, I stayed silent and prepared to leave. "Stop right there." But Clarice Liu flared up in anger. "Who do you think you are, daring to ignore me? Didn't you hear me speaking?" I lowered my head and replied calmly, "I heard you, miss, but I'm not sure where this pestering comes from. It's true I'm a courtesan, but I've never held a knife to young Master Pei's neck to force him to visit me. He pays, I entertain. It's a straightforward transaction. Where is the shame in that? You've got quite the sharp tongue." Clarice Liu stepped closer, suddenly gripping my chin, her eyes clouded with jealousy and venom, born with a vixen's face. "No wonder she's so skilled at seducing men," she said coldly. "Slap her face until it's ruined. Let's see how she flirts without that pretty face." I frowned, surprised that a noble lady could speak so vulgarly and act so unreasonably tyrannical. Yet the old nanny behind her quickly stepped forward, gripped my face tightly, and began slapping me hard from both sides. My maid Autumn behind me tried to rush to my aid, but was restrained by Clarice Liu's servants. The old nanny's hands were rough with calluses, and she struck with full force. Within a few slaps, my face swelled, my vision blurred, and blood trickled from my lips. Autumn cried out to Sean Pei, "Master Pei, please save my lady, Master Pei." But Sean Pei merely watched coldly, saying nothing. Only when I was beaten so badly I could barely stand did he finally speak, his tone indifferent. "Enough." Clarice Liu frowned. "Are you Xin Tengla?" Sean Pei merely smiled as he smoothed her hair. "I just thought stooping to their level would be beneath your dignity." Clarice Liu smiled with satisfaction, waving for the old nanny to release me. My body went weak, my cheeks throbbed with pain, my ears rang, and I desperately clung to Autumn's hand to keep from collapsing. Sean Pei soon left with Clarice Liu, without giving me another glance. That very night, Sean Pei came to see me. I hadn't intended to receive clients, but the madam took his silver and gave me no chance to refuse. In the first 2 years after I sold myself, the madam believed my face was a rare treasure. She hired many to teach me poetry, music, chess, and painting, hoping to groom me into a top courtesan for a hefty profit. But by the time she wanted me to start taking clients, Sean Pei had already achieved the title of top scholar. He reserved me exclusively, forbidding me from selling myself to anyone else. Though displeased, the madam had to swallow her pride. Over the years, his status had soared, and he'd become the crown prince's most favored confidant. Anyone with eyes could see Sean Pei's boundless future, and she dared not cross him. Sean Pei entered and immediately pinched my chin, examining me briefly before pulling a bottle of medicine from his robe to apply on me. The high-quality ointment felt cool against my skin, quickly easing the stinging pain. I turned my head away, refusing to let him apply it. Sean Pei's expression darkened as he applied pressure. Sweat beaded on my forehead from the pain, yet I still refused to turn back. "Enough," he said, his tone uncharacteristically soft. "What is her status?" "Her father is a second rank court official. Her mother is Princess Annal. She was raised in luxury since childhood. And what is your status? Why must you argue with her? Your temperament needs smoothing. Do you still think of yourself as a young lady of noble birth?" I paused, suddenly recalling how willful I was as a child, always insisting on getting what I wanted. When a young lady who disliked me tried to humiliate me, I directly grabbed her hair and pushed her into the water. My mother was furious and threatened to use the family discipline rod, but when it was brought out, she couldn't bring herself to strike me. Instead, she gritted her teeth and tapped my forehead. Why on earth did we raise such a fearless little devil? What will become of her? My father stepped in to plead for me. Enough. And Sway didn't mean it. Clearly, others provoked her first. And what's wrong with being fearless? As long as I'm her father, who dares bully her? My mother glared in frustration. Just keep spoiling her. Let's see if you can do it for a lifetime. Little did we know, those words would prove prophetic. I stared blankly at my toes, suddenly overwhelmed with sorrow. I didn't cry when Madame beat me to force me into prostitution, nor when Clarice Liu ordered others to strike me. But now, my eyes welled up despite myself. If my parents were still here, seeing me like this would break their hearts. In the past, they'd fret over a single strand of my hair falling out. Now, after enduring so many slaps, there's no one left to ache for me or stand up for me. Sean Pei really knows how to strike where it hurts. I remained silent, and Sean Pei's expression grew increasingly grim. In his eyes, him taking the initiative to seek me out was already giving me a way out. Before him, I had always been tender as water, utterly compliant. Never before had I been so tactless as today. Lian Xiao, don't be ungrateful. No, when enough is enough. I lowered my head and looked at the tips of my shoes. Fine. Sean Pei sneered coldly and threw the medicine in his hand onto the ground. Then he abruptly stood up and stormed off in a huff. Autumn cautiously approached behind me and began massaging my shoulders. "Miss," she sighed, "why did you anger young Master Pei? He's your only hope now. You've adored him for so many years, and he only recently relented, saying he would redeem you and take you away." I touched my severely swollen and painful cheek and glanced at the box by the bed. Sean Pei was angry. I knew, since childhood, it had always been me chasing after him, coaxing him, yielding to him. After Autumn left, I took out the box and retrieved the silver notes hidden in the secret compartment. 1,800 silver taels. That's all the savings I've scraped together over these years. It's not that I never thought of asking Sean Pei to redeem me. Back when I sold myself, it wasn't solely for his sake. I knew deeply that a girl like me, with some looks, couldn't survive alone without any support. Sean Pei wasn't just my fiancé. He was a man, talented, well-read, capable of earning scholarly honors. He was my only hope for survival. Those 20 silver taels from selling myself were my pledge of loyalty to him. Indeed, Sean Pei remembered my sacrifice. As he rose swiftly through the ranks over the years, he shielded my life in the brothel. The madam didn't dare force me into prostitution. I only had to play tunes for guests, and no one shortchanged my food, clothing, or needs. Whenever troublesome customers arose, Sean Pei always stepped in to resolve it. I once truly imagined a future with Sean Pei, even if just as a concubine. Back when my father desperately sent me away, he only said one thing to me, "And Sway, survive. As long as you live, there is hope. If I live, my family's case will be overturned. No, the wrongful deaths of all 72 members of my family will one day be vindicated." So even though Sean Pei has always been indifferent to me, I showered him with endless tenderness and affection. Everyone knew I adored Master Pei, waiting for him to redeem me and take me out of here. Even Sean Pei himself believed it. He thought I loved him, and since I'm now a courtesan, my only way out is to wait for him to buy my freedom. I used to think so too, given my status. I could never be Sean Pei's lawful wife. Hoping to become his concubine based on our past affection was the best outcome I could envision. But now, I see things differently. Sean Pei is clearly going to marry this Miss Liu, and with her tactics, I'd likely be tormented to death not long after entering the household. And when that happens, would Sean Pei stand up for me? He'd probably just watch coldly, just as he did today. I clutched the silver note in my hand. When my parents were alive, they always taught me one truth. In this world, no one is truly reliable except yourself. All these years, I've been supporting Sean Pei's studies while converting all the gold, silver, and jewels given by patrons into silver taels, just in case he couldn't be relied upon someday. So I'd have a fallback plan. That time has now come. Suddenly, all my daily necessities and luxuries were cut back. I used to live in the best room in the establishment, pick the finest jewelry, and dine on meals costing several taels of silver. But now the madam suddenly smiled and told me to move out, letting the establishment's top courtesan take over my room. I was left with only Autumn as my maidservant. No one brings bathwater anymore, so Autumn and I have to heat ourselves bit by bit. And the madam even complains we use too much firewood. Even the food I get is just leftovers from others. I have to spend my own money to send Pearl out to buy meals. Everyone in the establishment used to greet me with smiles, and even the madam had to show me some respect. But now, those who were once jealous of me are adding insult to injury. The top courtesan directly had someone take all my fine clothes, and when I argued with her, she covered her mouth and laughed. These clothes were all provided by the establishment. Since when did they become yours? Lian Xiao, you don't still think you're Sean Pei's favorite, do you? Out of respect for Sean Pei, I used to humor you and call you sister. But did you really start thinking you were something special? As she left, she sneered while holding the clothes. Don't blame me, sister. I've got plenty of clients now and need nice clothes for every occasion. You, on the other hand, are past your prime with hardly any patrons. Such a waste to let these go to ruin on you. After she left, Autumn stamped her foot angrily. She was always the biggest flatterer before, fawning over you like a lapdog, calling you sister this and sister that. Now she turns her back without a second thought. What a piece of work. I waved my hand. It's fine. If she likes them, let her take them. I knew this had to be Sean Pei's doing. This was his punishment for me. Punishment for my disobedience. He's making it clear that without him, I'm nothing, just someone to be trampled on like a dog. But I never imagined he could be even crueler than I thought. The next day, the madam told me that once my injuries healed, I'd have to start entertaining clients. Only then did I realize that Sean Pei had withdrawn his protection over me. The madam, wearing a red flower, gave me a hypocritical smile. I told you before, men are unreliable. Now you still end up having to serve clients. Don't you? Serve the guests well. Earn your silver. Only money in your own hands is truly yours. I knew this was Sean Pei's punishment for me. Punishment for my disobedience. He was telling me that without him, I am nothing. Dazed, I walked back to my room, but as I passed the corridor, I heard screams from nearby. I recognized that voice. It was Pearl, my closest sister in this brothel. I peeked through a crack in the door and saw a group of men drinking and listening to music inside, accompanied by several women. A ballet, sinister looking man was pressing down on Pearl, his gaze slithering over her like a venomous snake. The heir of Marquis Chingen. I recognized him at once. His reputation in the capital's brothels was notorious for being uncastrated. His methods were exceptionally depraved. Rumor had it the courtesans who died in his bed were too many to count on both hands, but he paid handsomely each time to settle matters, so no one ever intervened. Tears welled in Pearl's eyes, her terror nearly overflowing, but her mouth was clamped shut, stifling any scream. If she were taken away by the heir of Marquis Chingen today, she might never see tomorrow's sun again. I hesitated at the door for a long moment. Just as Pearl was about to be dragged away by her hair, I gritted my teeth, shoved the door open, and threw myself to my knees before the heir with a thud. Your lordship, Pearl is unclean and might spoil your mood. Please, let her go. Interrupted in his pleasure. The heir whirled around to glare at me, anger flashing in his eyes. Then, a smirk curled his lips as he looked me up and down, a flicker of interest crossing his face. He shoved Pearl aside, strode over, and gripped my chin. Sean Pay's woman? That hypocrite has surprisingly good taste. Since you won't let her come, then you'll take her place. Today, I'll see what Sean Pay's woman tastes like. As he spoke, he tried to drag me away. I glanced around and noticed a man in black robes sitting at the head seat, watching me with keen interest. I bit my lip hard and stayed silent. Just as the heir of Marquis Cheng'en reached for my clothes, the man suddenly spoke. He said coolly, "Zhang Lu, you're in my line of sight. Get out." The heir of Marquis Cheng'en froze mid-action. A shadow flickered in his eyes before he quickly forced an ingratiating smile, his face pale with unconcealed fear. "Since the commander doesn't wish to see me, I'll leave at once." Without another word, he released me and swiftly exited. The others grew panicked too, rising to make excuses and take their leave. In moments, only the man and I remained in the room. He walked over and looked down at me. "Why did you save her? Aren't you afraid?" I looked up at Victor Wei, my voice hoarse as I said, "I am." Victor Wei lowered his head, the corners of his thin lips lifting in an almost imperceptible curve. "I thought you were naturally bold and never afraid." The first time I met Victor Wei was in the brothel, but he wasn't there for pleasure. He was there to kill. Clad in his flying fish robe, he drew his blade from beneath his black cloak and cleanly severed a man's head. The courtesans paled in terror, the patrons trembled in fear, and some even wet themselves on the spot. I heard someone whisper, "Why has this king of hell returned?" Later, I learned he was the famed commander of the Imperial Guard, who had taken charge of life and death authority and the entire Imperial Guard force just after coming of age. Victor Wei's father was a great general who died in battle. His mother, the emperor's own sister, followed her husband in death, leaving behind their only son. He is the emperor's own nephew and his most trusted confidant. The emperor even granted him the authority to execute first and report later. Rumors painted Victor Wei as a green-faced, fanged freak 8 feet tall, but seeing him in person revealed a tall, elegant, and dashing nobleman. Yet his face was still spattered with crimson, his bloodied sword not yet sheathed at his waist, and when his dark eyes swept over you, it felt like being flayed alive. The second time I saw him, he came with a group of officials to listen to music. It was clear everyone present feared him, especially the girls who had witnessed him kill on the street last time. They trembled, too afraid to approach him. In the end, only I walked to his side, lowering my gaze to pour his wine. I sat quietly by his side the whole time, refilling his cup whenever it was empty, neither speaking much nor avoiding him. As he was leaving, Victor Wei glanced at me and asked in a flat, unemotional tone, "What is your name?" I replied respectfully, "Sir, this concubine is named Lian Xiao." He nodded, tossed down a purse of silver, and left. After that, Victor Wei would come to me each time he finished a kill, sometimes to drink, sometimes to hear me play the pipa. Occasionally, when I played a tune poorly, he never grew angry. He never took advantage of me like others did, and he never once stepped onto my bed. It was as if he came only to hear me play a few songs. Yet each time he left, he threw down generous rewards. More than half of that 1,800 taels of silver came from him. Today, it was only because I saw him here that I dared enter to save Pearl. I was gambling, betting that I held some uniqueness in his eyes. It seems my gamble paid off. "Why didn't you call for my help earlier?" Victor Wei's tone was flat, devoid of inflection. I knelt prostrate on the ground, my eyes fixed on the gold, threaded boots before me. "You can save me for a moment, but not for a lifetime." For a long while, there was no sound from above. Just as I began to fear Victor Wei was angered, he spoke suddenly, his tone unreadable. "What if I said I could save you for a lifetime?" I looked up, startled, wondering if I had misheard, but Victor Wei said nothing more. Turning to leave through the door, the madam suddenly informed me I no longer needed to entertain guests, just play the zither as before. I assumed Sean Pei had spoken up again, and didn't think much of it. When Autumn excitedly told me Sean Pei had arrived, I was counting my silver notes. I hastily hid the silver notes before he entered the room. Sean Pei sat at the table, poured himself tea, and, without even glancing at me, said, "Have you come to your senses these past few days?" I nodded. "I have." He seemed to soften toward me, his tone gentler, finally deigning to lift his head and look at me. "You've always been this way since childhood, only learning your lesson after suffering a loss. I'll be marrying Clarice Liu later this month. She's prone to jealousy, and for now, I still have to consider her father's standing." He placed a 2,000 tael silver note on the table. "You know your status well. I can't take you into my household just yet, but I've found a residence where you can stay outside for now. If you bear a child, I'll take it back for Clarice Liu to raise, giving the child a proper status. If an opportunity arises later, I cut him off. "Young Master Sean, you're overthinking things. I don't need you to redeem me." Sean Pei was taken aback for a moment, then quickly collected himself, frowning as he said, "What?" I chuckled lightly and pushed the silver note back toward him. I said, "I won't be leaving with you. Has someone else offered to redeem you?" He asked instinctively. I shook my head. "Then are you still angry about that incident?" "Not that either." Sean Pei's eyes turned mocking, a cold smirk curling at the corner of his lips. "Lian Xiao, I know you've always been stubborn since childhood, but you're no longer some noble young lady. Wake up. If you won't come with me, do you really intend to stay a prostitute for life, having grown accustomed to selling yourself?" He never minced words. But at this point, I was no longer angry, just lowering my head to sip my tea. "All right," Sean Pei said with barely suppressed anger. "From now on, I won't let Clarice Liu see you again, and I won't let her trouble you anymore. If there's a child, and you want to keep and raise it yourself, then keep it. Is that acceptable?" I was a bit surprised, never expecting Sean Pei would actually concede, but I still refused. "No need." Anger surfaced on Sean Pei's face. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything." I stood up and looked out the window. The trees along the spring street had sprouted new buds, a tender green stretching into the distance. I said softly, "Sean Pei, I don't want to be entangled with you anymore. Back then, I sold myself into prostitution to save you. But over the years, you've taken care of me in many ways. We're even now. From now on, let's go our separate ways. A clean break?" Sean Pei shot to his feet and grabbed my chin. His eyes were red. For a moment, I thought he might hit me, but he just stared at me intently, and after a long while, he laughed through gritted teeth, suppressing his anger. Fine. What a splendid, each to their own path." He shoved me away abruptly, as if discarding something filthy. "I'd like to see how you'll survive without me from now on." "Wait," I called out to stop him. Sean Pei halted his steps, turning back with a look of disdain. "Regretting it already?" I pulled our marriage certificate from my robe and handed it to him. "Here, take it. It'll be useless soon anyway." Fury simmered in Sean Pei's eyes, a storm brewing. He took the certificate, clenched it in his hand, and laughed bitterly in his rage. "Serena Liu." It was the first time he had spoken my name. "I'll be waiting for you to come begging." Sean Pei left, and I dug out the silver notes. 2,000 taels in silver notes. I had finally scraped together enough. Just as I was about to go find the madam, Autumn rushed in, her expression strange, a mix of excitement and urgency. "Miss, someone else has come to buy your freedom." I was taken aback. Over the years, because of Sean Pei, few guests dared to request me. At most, they'd listen to me play a tune. Who else would spend so much silver to redeem me? Autumn wrung her hands. "It's Lord Victor Wei." I never expected Victor Wei to redeem me, but once I collected myself, I still respectfully invited Victor Wei in, thanked him graciously, and then politely declined. Victor Wei looked surprised but quickly regained his composure. He said, "I thought you deliberately approached me just so I would redeem you." So, he had seen through it. From our first encounter, I had an ulterior motive, and in every interaction thereafter, I gradually worked to deepen our bond. I would ask him to bring me little trinkets when he was in a good mood. I'd beg him to tell me stories of the outside world. I'd plead for his help in tracking down lost sheet music. To outsiders, he was a merciless killer, but in my eyes, he could even be called good-tempered, hardly ever refusing any of my requests. I did consider that if Shanpei proved unreliable, I could have Victor Wei redeem me. He was orphaned, young and handsome, held a high position, truly a good candidate for lifelong reliance. Moreover, he commanded the Imperial Guard. He surely had the means to help overturn my parents' wrongful conviction. But now I no longer think that way. I don't want to rely on men my whole life. To be redeemed by a man, become his concubine, trapped in the inner chambers waiting for his favor, only to grow old and die alone. If my parents were still here, they certainly wouldn't want to see me live that kind of life. I want to live well, to live as a person, an independent, dignified person. Then, what will you do next? Victor Wei wasn't angry, his expression still calm. I didn't hide it from him. I've saved enough to redeem myself, and I plan to open a medical clinic after gaining freedom. A few years ago, while outside the city, I happened to save a refugee woman named Xia. I later learned her family was a family of healers. In my spare time, I would study medicine with her. She was very grateful to me, never looked down on my status, and taught me everything she knew. Over the years, I often secretly followed her outside the city to treat refugees. My medical skills improved rapidly, and she said I was already ready to graduate. Last year, she got married and moved north with her husband, leaving all her medical books to me when she departed. I thought perhaps I could open a medical clinic to make a living. I expected Victor Wei to mock me, just like Shanpei had, but he simply nodded and said, "Not bad. If you need any help in the future, you can come to me." I was taken aback for a moment, then smiled genuinely this time. All right, the madam took my 2,000 taels of silver and readily returned my indenture contract to me. I gave her the remaining jewelry, and she handed Autumn over to me as well. In her eyes, I was a money-losing burden who couldn't earn anymore, and she couldn't wait to see me go. I searched with Autumn for several days and finally rented a small shop. I used what little money I had left to buy cabinets and good medicinal herbs, wrote my own signboard, and specialized in treating women's ailments. Thus, the clinic officially opened. During those years practicing medicine with Xia, I witnessed many women suffering from gynecological illnesses. Some had developed chronic conditions from early hardships, while others had husbands who indulged in promiscuity outside and brought back venereal diseases. These women endured great pain but, for the sake of reputation, dared not seek treatment openly. I wanted these women to feel safe coming here for treatment. The clinic's opening went smoother than I expected. The first few days indeed saw few visitors. But after the first woman gathered the courage to come for a consultation, more and more began to arrive. Word spread among these women, and soon the clinic became bustling with activity, almost to the point of being overwhelmed. One day, while I was weighing herbs, someone lifted the curtain and entered. I recognized her as a woman I had treated before. She had been suffering from persistent lochia after miscarriage. Her husband forbade her from seeing a male doctor, so her condition had dragged on untreated for a long time. After taking several doses of medicine from me, her lochia had gradually stopped. She handed me a bowl. We made dumplings at home. Dr. Lu, please try some. I accepted it with a smile. Only 2 months had passed, yet thinking back to those days felt like recalling another lifetime. Those painful, helpless times were finally over. Now, I was truly living the life I wanted, living with dignity as a human being. Just as I was about to eat the dumplings, a loud crash came from the door. My hand slipped, and the bowl shattered to pieces on the ground. Several servants in short coats barged in, followed by Clarice Liu. She wore an emerald gossamer dress, with a full set of lustrous pearl hair ornaments, looking extravagantly wealthy. Spotting me, she curled her lip. Smash it all. The servants immediately began wrecking my clinic, scattering the carefully dried herbs I prepared and startling patients into screams. I shouted angrily, "Miss Liu, what is the meaning of this?" Clarice Liu stared at my face for a long time, a flash of jealousy and venomous resentment in her eyes. "You bitch. How dare you play innocent? Sean postponed our wedding. If you hadn't seduced him, how could he treat me like this?" I was taken aback, then explained, "I've already made things clear with Shanpei. I have nothing to do with him. But Clarice Liu completely ignored my explanation, shouting to the patients around her, "Let me tell you all, she used to be a prostitute at the House of Wishes. How dare you let a whore ridden by 1,000 men, pillowed by 10,000 men treat you? Aren't you afraid of catching her filthy diseases?" The crowd erupted in murmurs, pointing at me and whispering among themselves. Even the woman who had just brought me dumplings took a step back, her eyes wide as she stared at me. Bystanders gathering around began to watch with mocking amusement. I thought this doctor was quite pretty earlier. Turns out she's a prostitute. No wonder. A doctor? More like she's running this medical clinic as a front for prostitution. He looks decent enough. But who knew he was a whore? I actually considered coming here for treatment earlier. Oh dear. Now that I've stepped inside, I hope I haven't caught some filthy disease. I stood among the crowd, watching all the patients flee from me as if I were a plague. Seeing the people on the street gawking at me like I was a spectacle, I suddenly felt as if I were back in the days when I was sold into prostitution, when the madam stripped me naked and forced me to agree to take clients with a hot iron. Clarice Liu smirked triumphantly as she walked up to me. "Did you really think that just because you left the House of Wishes and changed your name, no one would recognize you? Let me tell you, you'll always be a lowly creature who can never rise above your station. A whore forever. You picked the wrong man to seduce." She dug her nails hard into my face. "Your mistake was not knowing what kind of trash you are. Pei Lang is mine. You shouldn't have touched him." With that, she waved her hand, signaling for her men to tie me up and take me away. A chill ran through my whole body. I knew exactly what would happen if Clarice Liu took me away. And with her father's high position and power, no one would dare offend him for my sake. Just as I was in despair, someone suddenly walked in and slapped Clarice Liu's hand with the flat of a blade. The blow was quite forceful. She grunted in pain and was about to speak, but the color drained from her face the moment she saw who it was. Lord Wei. Victor Wei's fearsome reputation was known throughout the capital. Clarice Liu forced a weak smile. "Lord Wei, what brings you here?" Victor Wei didn't even glance at her, saying coldly, "Step aside." Clarice Liu gritted her teeth and pointed at me. "She's a prostitute, yet she poses as a physician here. I simply couldn't stand by and watch her harm people. Could it be that Lord Wei was also once one of her admirers? And that's why you're playing the chivalrous hero here. My father is Lu Shan, the Minister of Revenue. What if I insist on taking her away today? How dare you lay a hand on me?" Victor Wei suddenly laughed. With his icy, unapproachable demeanor, his laughter lifted the corners of his eyes, giving him an unexpectedly alluring charm. But the laughter was too cold. He drew his blade and pressed it against Clarice Liu's neck. The icy blade traced a bloody line across her neck, blood trickling down her collar. Victor Wei curled his lips. "Miss Liu, even if your father were standing right here, I'd slit your throat without a second thought." Clarice Liu had probably never had a blade held to her throat before in her life. Her legs trembled, her face turned deathly pale, and suddenly I caught a whiff of something foul in the air. Glancing down, I saw Clarice Liu's trousers were soaked. Victor Wei recoiled in disgust, sheathing his blade and stepping back. The onlookers burst into mocking laughter. "Whose daughter is this? Pissing herself right in the street. Didn't you hear her? She's the daughter of Minister of Revenue Lu Shan. TSK. How does such a high-ranking official raise a daughter like this? Ugh, it reeks. Get away from her." Overwhelmed by shock and humiliation, Clarice Liu fainted outright. After she was carried away, I finally gathered my wits and thanked Victor Wei. "Thank you, Lord Wei. But what brings you here?" He paused briefly. "Official business. I was just passing by." As he spoke, he untied a jade pendant from his waist and handed it to me. "In a few days, I'll be heading to Riverbend City and won't be in the capital. If anyone gives you trouble, take this pendant to the Imperial Guard. They'll assist you." With that, he left, holding the pendant. I couldn't help but smile. Passing by, my foot, he clearly came specifically to deliver this pendant to me. Still, I didn't call him out on it and said cheerfully, "Then I thank you, Lord Wei. My medical clinic can no longer stay open. Ever since Clarice Luce spread the word about my past as a courtesan, no one has come to seek my treatment. The woman who brought me dumplings last time visited once more, stammered a few words of comfort, and hurried away. I understood her predicament. Associating with someone like me would tarnish her reputation. As a woman, she has her own struggles. To make matters worse, marriage proposals started coming my way. None from decent families, only layabouts, the disabled, or widowers known to have beaten their wives to death. When Sean Pei found me, I was being harassed by a local ruffian. He leered and reached to touch my chin. What's a whore like you pretending to be chased for? I'm already being generous by not ing you for sleeping with so many men, and you dare look down on me? This guy had always loitered around my medical clinic before. After the shop was smashed, he grew bold enough to come to my door, and had been pestering me for days, insisting I marry him. I was utterly fed up, but helpless, just debating whether to use the jade pendant Victor Wake had given me when a hand suddenly shot out. A fan struck the ruffian hard across the face. He crumpled to the ground, clutching his mouth, and moments later spat out 2 bloody teeth. Sean Pei tossed the fan away in disgust, looking down at me from his height. Is this the life you wanted after leaving me? I bit my lip and stayed silent. Seeing me in such dire straits seemed to put Sean Pei in a rather good mood. And Sway, come back with me. You never needed to suffer this much. I turned away, refusing without a word. Sean Pei paused. Wasn't it Clarice Liu who came to trouble you? I heard Victor Wei stood up for you. He chuckled lightly. You're not setting your sights on him, are you? His mother is the Kongping princess. He's not only the emperor's closest nephew, but also his most trusted confidant. A true blue blood. Even if your Liu family hadn't been disgraced, you'd only qualify as his concubine. What foolish hopes are you clinging to? I finally snapped, clenching my fists and glaring at her. Sean Pei, I'm not like you. I won't use myself as a bargaining chip to climb the social ladder. Perhaps I once did, but not anymore. I sneered. You're willing to sell yourself to the Liu family, but I refuse to sell myself to any man again. Unexpectedly, Sean Pei didn't get angry. He raised an eyebrow. So you still care about Clarice Liu after all? Rest assured, Liu Shan is now old and decrepit. The emperor has hinted at his retirement. Once he's gone, the Ministry of Revenue will be under my control. I'll deal with Clarice Liu then. I won't keep such a fool as my wife. I laughed. Then, will you marry me? Sean Pei fell silent for a moment. Serena, you know your current status. I'm pursuing an official career. I can't have a wife who could become a stain on my reputation. He seemed to make a great concession. Besides status, I can give you everything else. Isn't that enough? I couldn't bear to listen any longer and turned to leave. Sean Pei's cold voice came from behind. Serena Liu, who else would want you besides me? You have no other path but to marry me. I didn't speak, nor did I look back. Suddenly, I remembered what Professor Summer Xia once told me when teaching me medicine. In this world, it's hard for women to survive. At its root, it's because women lack a foundation to stand on and can only rely on men. Serena, I'm teaching you medicine so that in the future, after you're divorced, you can live without having to depend on a man. Back then, my heart was still set on Sean Pei, and I thought little of it. Sean will redeem me someday. I won't be left with no way to survive. She just smiled and gently stroked my hair. One day you'll understand. No one in this world is reliable. If you depend on a man, and one day he grows tired and refuses to give you a path, you'll be left with no recourse. The road you carve out yourself may be tough, but it's yours alone. No one can take it from you. I no longer need others to pave my way. I will forge my own path. In the sweltering heat of August, grim news arrived from Riverbend City. A plague had ravaged 3 towns, leaving corpses strewn across the fields and claiming countless lives. Hearing the news, I felt as if I'd been plunged into an icy abyss. Riverbend City, that was where Summer Xia had settled. I dropped everything, packed my belongings, and rushed toward Riverbend City. Autumn tearfully pulled at me. Miss, almost everyone in Riverbend is dead. It's the plague. Going there won't help. But I paid no heed to her words. Whipping my horse into a gallop toward Riverbend City, I couldn't just wait idly, even if there was a sliver of hope. I had to go save Summer Xia. After half a month on the road, I finally reached Riverbend City. The situation was even worse than the rumors described. The city reeked unbearably, with corpses everywhere that hadn't been burned in time. The streets were deserted, hardly a soul in sight. I searched for several days before finally finding Summer Xia at a medical clinic outside the city walls. Her husband had died in the plague, but she had no time to grieve, still distributing preventive herbal brews to the people. When she saw me, she instinctively wanted to scold me, but instead said nothing and came forward to embrace me. After all these years apart, she had grown much thinner, her shoulders bony and prominent. Her body trembled slightly, as if utterly exhausted. We held each other in wordless embrace. Nothing needed to be said. In the days that followed, I spent every day alongside Summer Xia, tending to the disaster victims. More and more people died. The plague could only be prevented, not cured, and each day we watched countless people perish before our eyes. The sweltering summer heat was unbearable, and as if that weren't enough, relentless rains caused the riverbanks to burst, flooding the lands and allowing the plague to spread at a terrifying pace. It was then that Summer Xia fell ill. Though we worked tirelessly outside the city walls, and she took every precaution, wearing boiled cloth masks daily, it was impossible to ward off the sickness completely, tears streaming down my face. I sat by her bedside, but she kept smiling and urging me to leave. I have no regrets in this life. I should have died with my father and mother in that famine long ago, but you gave me these extra years. I am truly content. Go and sway. You've done all you can. You still have a bright future ahead. Don't waste it here with me. I shook my head through my tears, gripping her hand tightly. I'll take you back to the city. I will find a way to save you. I swear it. Back in the city, I sat alone in my room, numb with despair. After all the medicine we distributed, I had no herbs left, and no money to buy more. Just as I felt all hope was lost, I received even worse news. Victor Wei had also arrived in Riverbend City. He had also contracted the plague. When I found Victor Wei, he was lying on the bed, not looking particularly haggard, just a bit pale. His black hair was scattered over the porcelain pillow, his usual sternness gone. He sighed when he saw me. What are you doing here? Aren't you afraid of catching the sickness? I gripped the quilt tightly. I should be the one asking what you're doing here. Is this what you call official business? His servant Moy whispered softly. The young master only rushed to Riverbend City to take you away after hearing Miss Lien Xiao had come. Now look, you're perfectly fine, while my young master has fallen ill. Victor Wei shot him a look, and he fell silent. It wasn't until I stepped out and asked the physician that I learned Victor Wei was far from as well as he appeared. He had been ill for a long time, and if I hadn't accidentally heard the news, he probably would have kept hiding it from me. After taking his medicine, he fell asleep. I sat by his bedside, carefully tracing the lines of his face. I don't know why he came looking for me. In my view, there might be some affection between us. But how much could there really be? At first, he wanted to buy my freedom. Later, he helped me out of a tight spot. Now, knowing I'm in Riverbend City, he's come to rescue me again. What have I done to deserve such treatment from him? I began frantically reading medical texts and testing herbs. Day after day, I shut myself indoors, burning through candle after candle until my eyes ached and blurred. Everyone urged me to rest, but I didn't dare. Summer Xia and Victor Wei were counting on me to save their lives. I'd head up the mountain before dawn to dig for herbs, once nearly falling off a cliff and breaking my leg. I experimented on myself, pored over countless medical books, yet none recorded a cure for the plague. Night and day, I was haunted by nightmares, drifting in a daze but too afraid to stop. I watched the two of them wither away day by day, terrified that if I rested, Summer Xia and Victor Wei wouldn't last. That evening, as I was about to test a few more medicines, I suddenly noticed many boxes and cases had appeared in the room. The boxes contained treasures, rare items, fine silver, and even 2 cases full of silver notes. What is all this? I grabbed Moy, who had delivered the items. His nose was red, clearly from recent tears. The young master sent me to deliver these. He said these things are for you to rely on. Miss, the value of these items on the floor was beyond imagination, yet I didn't spare them a glance. Trembling uncontrollably, why would Victor Wei give all these things to me? Does he think he can't hold on any longer? I rushed to his room and found him slightly thinner, his slender fingers pale as he coughed softly into them. Victor Wei, why did you send someone to deliver those things to me? His voice was hoarse but still composed. Just giving you some things to rely on. It's always good for a woman to have more wealth. I clenched my hands tightly to hold back tears. Did today's medicine work? He shook his head. I've tried countless prescriptions on patients, and whenever one showed better results, I'd have Victor Wei and Summer Xia use it, but it still wasn't enough. I practically stumbled back into the room, not even remembering how I fell asleep. Before this, I hadn't slept a wink for 3 straight days. I was too exhausted. I couldn't hold on any longer. Victor Wei and Summer Xia's conditions began to deteriorate rapidly. At first, they could still stay conscious for a while and say a few words, but later they fell into a coma. Many doctors came, shook their heads, and said there was no hope, but I refused to give up, changing the prescriptions again and again. Finally, one day while descending the mountain, I collapsed from exhaustion and fainted. I dreamt of my parents for the first time in what felt like ages. In the dream, they said nothing, only stroked my head with heartache. I hugged them and wept uncontrollably. Father, mother, what should I do? They are the most important people to me. I can't lose them. But before they could say anything, I was shaken awake. When I came to, I was lying in my room, aching all over and covered in wounds. In my daze, I saw someone with tears on their face, both crying and laughing. Autumn rubbed her eyes hard. Miss, you're risking your life. Then she broke into a smile through her tears. Lord Wei and Miss Xia are both awake. The prescription worked. The 328th prescription I tried finally took effect. One of the herbs in it was something I gathered myself from the mountains after reading about it in a medical text. At first, I didn't dare use it, but after testing it on myself with no issues, and then on other patients, I finally felt confident enough to give it to Summer Xia and Victor Wei. By the time I rushed to their room, both of them had already woken up, though still very weak. Victor Wei was actually able to sip some porridge, and Summer Xia was asking for water in a faint, breathy voice. When I arrived, Summer Xia grasped my hand. The plague had left her looking so haggard, yet her eyes remained as gentle and bright as ever. She said, "And Sui, thank you." My prescription was promptly taken away, and medicine was being brewed and distributed everywhere. At first, there wasn't enough medicinal herbs, but later they were urgently transported from elsewhere. 2 months later, this plague gradually subsided. Victor Wei and Summer Xia also slowly recovered. Victor Wei didn't linger long. He returned to the capital immediately after recovering. Half a month later, while I was studying medicinal herbs with Summer Xia, we suddenly heard the sound of gongs and drums outside. Coming out, I saw a grand procession of several dozen people, led by a clean, shaven eunuch with a pale complexion. He smiled and unfurled a bright yellow imperial edict. Miss Liu, receive the decree. I was stunned and instinctively knelt down. By decree of the emperor, the commoner Serena Liu, well, read and principled, intelligent and quick-witted, dignified in conduct, gentle and prudent by nature, has through selfless rescue efforts and meritorious service in quelling the epidemic greatly pleased our heart. She is hereby granted the title of County Princess with the honorific Bowning, bestowed with 100 bolts of brocade, 5,000 taels of silver, and a fief of 100 households in Luoyang County of Riverbend City. Let the ceremonial decree be issued immediately. So ordered. Second, I followed Eunuch Huang back to the court to offer gratitude for the promotion. As I departed, the villagers rose before dawn to see me off. My carriage piled high with dried vegetables, duck eggs, cured meats. They had little money. These were the finest gifts they could offer. Miss Liu, do come back to visit often. Thank you. Miss Liu, you saved our whole family. I've lit a longevity lamp for you. The Bodhisattva will surely bless you with 100 years of life. Miss Liu, safe travels. They chased after my carriage, waving tirelessly until they vanished from sight. I lowered the curtain, wiped my eyes, and couldn't help but laugh. Even kneeling in the Golden Throne Hall, I still felt somewhat dazed. Just months ago, I was still a prostitute scorned by all, but now I had become the esteemed lady of Bowning County. Two gazes remained fixed on me. Looking left, Sean Pei stood in the crowd, his eyes deep and unreadable. To the right, Victor Wei stood at the forefront of the crowd, smiling and nodding at me. The Emperor's voice from above was authoritative. Serena Liu, you have rendered great service in quelling the epidemic and saving thousands of disaster victims. A county title is insufficient reward. Do you have any other requests? I froze, feeling as if a sudden wind had swept across the plain. In an instant, countless faces flashed before my eyes, yet none were clear. I pressed my forehead to the ground and spoke word by word. Your Majesty, and Sui is my childhood name. This humble concubine is called Lu Jinan. The surrounding ministers began to murmur, unsure why I had said this. I expected my voice to tremble, but it did not. I spoke steadily. In the 13th year of Cheng Yuan, the Lu family was falsely accused of forming cliques for personal gain and seizing civilian farmlands. All 72 members of our household were executed. My father risked his life to send me away. He remained loyal to your Majesty his entire life. Uncorrupted and honest, I humbly beg your Majesty to reinvestigate the Lu case and restore my family's honor. The entire court erupted in uproar. Sean Pei finally lost his composure. Staring at me in shock, Victor Wei knelt beside me. Your Majesty, the Imperial Guard has uncovered the full truth of the Lu case these past days. Minister Lu was framed. The evidence is all here. I turned sharply and saw him produce a box from his robe. A eunuch beside him hurriedly presented it to the Emperor. I dared not look up. The Emperor reviewed the evidence for a long time before speaking. Approved. The next news I heard of Clarice Liu was that she had contracted the plague. It was said she was jostled by a refugee while visiting her suburban estate. Enraged, she whipped the refugee to death. Unaware the refugee was already plague-stricken, she fell ill upon returning. The irony was that the Liu family actually requested me to treat her. When I saw Clarice Liu, I barely recognized her. She was never considered beautiful, but at least she once had delicate features. Now she was emaciated, with dark circles under her eyes, sallow skin, and hair like withered straw. Nothing remained of her former noble woman's appearance. I released her, and she struggled to get up, still cursing under her breath. It's you. Why didn't you die in Riverbend City? Sean Pei called off the engagement. Was it you, you vixen, who seduced him? You wretched woman. How dare you call yourself a county princess? I'll have my father report this to the Emperor. You're just a prostitute, forever a filthy, lowly whore. I waved for the maidservant to leave, then strolled over leisurely and held up a bronze mirror to her face. If I were Sean Pei, I wouldn't want to be with you either. Just look at yourself now. Clarice Liu was horrified, swatting the mirror away and clawing at her own face. My face, my face. Even though she could barely stand, she still struggled to reach out and strike me, gritting her teeth as if I were her father's murderer. You're nothing but a prostitute, yet Sean Pei devotes all his attention to you, visiting you every day, even breaking off our engagement for your sake. My father is the Minister of Revenue. I've loved him deeply all these years, and my father has helped him so much. Why would he do this to me? She laughed and cried like a vengeful spirit, swiping at my face with her long nails. I caught her wrist and slapped her across the face. How dare you hit me? She gasped in disbelief, so I slapped her again with the back of my hand. She collapsed back onto the bed, wheezing heavily, glaring at me with venomous eyes but unable to rise again. Seeing her complexion, I roughly understood what illness she had. The southern plague had mutated by the time it reached the north, rendering previous prescriptions useless. But it wasn't hard to treat. Just 2 additional herbs were needed. Yet why should I save her? I took out a handkerchief to wipe my hands and walked out the door. I cannot cure your daughter's illness. You'd best seek another expert. The Minister of Revenue and Lady Lu looked utterly defeated. Lady Lu began coughing, but I didn't glance back as I turned and left. I felt no pity for them. Clarice Liu had taken countless lives over the years. Their failure to raise her properly had finally brought about their deserved retribution. 3 days later, the Liu residence hung white funeral banners. Clarice Liu was dead. They say she died a miserable death, her body covered in bruises, crying out Sean Pei's name until the end. But Sean Pei never once came to see her. 3 months later, the wrongful convictions against the Liu and Jiang families were finally overturned. I brought a jar of wine and sat before my parents' graves for a whole day, rambling on until even I lost track of what I was saying. With the burden of all these years finally lifted, I felt utterly exhausted. On a spring day brimming with blooming grass and singing orioles, Victor Wei personally came to propose marriage. I lowered my head and hesitated before speaking. Though I'm now a county princess, everyone of standing in the capital knows what I once was. Aren't you afraid of being mocked for marrying me? Gossip cuts sharper than any blade. Even Sean Pei, my childhood sweetheart, refused to marry me because I was a courtesan. Could Victor Wei truly not care at all? After hearing this, Victor Wei left without saying a word. I thought he had regretted it and was feeling miserable. But the next day, I received the imperial edict once again. The emperor has bestowed a marriage upon me and Victor Wei. How could this be? Victor Wei is his most beloved nephew. How could he let him marry me? Moi, who came to my home with the betrothal gifts, said with a grin, "A while ago, my young master investigated a treason case, and the emperor asked him what reward he wanted. He said he hadn't decided yet. Now, he's used that merit to exchange for the emperor's marriage decree. You can rest assured now, miss, with the emperor himself bestowing the marriage, no one will dare say a word." Before the wedding, we couldn't meet face to face, so Victor Wei climbed over the wall to talk to me through the window. I asked him, "Why do you want to marry me? Could it be that I saved you when we were young, and you fell deeply in love with me? So, when you grew up and saw me for the first time in the brothel, you recognized me and swore to marry no one but me." Victor Wei laughed. "If you ever stop being the county princess, you could make a living writing storybooks." I asked, puzzled, "Then why?" He thought for a moment. "I don't know. Probably because you have this unyielding spirit that keeps pushing forward no matter how tough things get." At first, I just found it interesting, but the more I watched, the more I couldn't look away. Besides, saving someone's life deserves repayment with oneself. You saved me, so of course I should offer myself to you as repayment. A slender, pale hand reached through the window. The same hand that held the knife with such determination, yet now gently grasped mine with surprising tenderness. And Sway, why does time feel so long? He sighed. I can't wait any longer. Just as I was about to rest, after Victor Wei left, the window was pushed open again. I turned back helplessly. Why are you back again? I told you the wedding will be soon. Just wait. I stopped mid-sentence. Sean Pei climbed through the window reeking of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot as if he hadn't slept well for days. He spoke, his voice hoarse. "You're getting married." I took a step back, wary. "What are you doing here?" Sean Pei pulled out the marriage certificate I thought he had long torn up. Stepping forward, "You're getting married? Then, what is this? And what am I to you?" I couldn't help but find it ridiculous. Back then, you said my lowly status made me unworthy and refused to marry me. What, now you want to backtrack? Sean Pei, you once told me not to regret it. Well, I don't regret it. Could it be that you do? Sean Pei stared straight at me, and just as I thought he wouldn't speak, he opened his mouth. Yes, I regret it. And Sway, we were engaged since childhood. You were always meant to be my wife. How can you marry someone else? The emperor himself arranged this marriage. If you have questions, you should ask him. Do you expect me to defy an imperial decree? Enough. I waved impatiently. I need to sleep. You should leave now. Sean Pei grabbed my hand tightly. And Sway, let's leave. Go somewhere no one knows us. It doesn't matter if the emperor arranged the marriage. I'll take you away. The drunkard's grip was unnaturally strong, and I gasped in pain. Leave? Go where? What about your future? I don't want it, he said urgently. I don't want it anymore. This official position isn't worth keeping. Let's go to Jiangnan, to the place you love. Just the two of us, living well, raising a son and a daughter. I never expected Sean Pei to say such words. His future once meant everything to him. And now, he actually wants to run away with me, abandoning everything. Before he could finish, I slapped him across the face. You're insane, Sean Pei. When I was down and out, you kicked me while I was down. Now that I'm doing well, you want to take me away. Can you just not stand to see me live a decent life? When you were on the verge of death, I sold myself to save you. When you took the imperial exams, I performed to earn money to support you. I owe you nothing. I won't go with you, I said coldly. I told you long ago, the roads diverge, and we each go our separate ways. From the moment you said you wouldn't marry me, we've had nothing to do with each other. Sean Pei touched his cheek in a daze. After a long while, a glistening tear slipped from the corner of his eye. But in sway, he said tremulously, what should I do now? I turned my back to him. Silence lingered behind me for a long while. When I looked back, Sean Pei was already gone. The peach blossoms in the early spring courtyard bloomed, fluttering down in the moonlight. I suddenly remembered when he climbed over my family's courtyard wall as a child. Also in spring, also with peach blossoms carpeting the ground. He said to me, hey Serena, your family has promised you to me. Did you know? I asked naively, what does promise do you mean? He laughed. It means we'll become husband and wife. And from now on we'll be together forever and ever. Sean Pei's perspective. Kanjing, your heart is not at peace. The abbot shook his head, looking at the young monk on the ground. Sean Pei lowered his head, parting his lips. I know. The day after leaving Serena Lu's home, he resigned from his official post and ascended the mountain to take monastic vows. Everything he had striven for in the first half of his life, even at the cost of betraying his own principles for official rank, now suddenly seemed utterly meaningless. After all those years of relentless pursuit, it had all come to nothing in the end. He gave himself the Dharma name Kanjing, hoping his heart could find purity, yet it seemed unable to settle. The abbot left. From the distant, misty mountains, faint sounds of gongs and drums seemed to drift. He paused and asked his senior fellow disciple beside him, where is that sound of gongs and drums coming from? The senior disciple listened carefully for a long while. There's nothing, but I heard that Commander Wei of the Imperial Guard is getting married today, to the county princess of Bowning. The junior disciple couldn't help but laugh. But the foot of the mountain is so far from here. How could we possibly hear anything? You must have misheard, junior brother. Misheard? Yet the joyous sounds felt vividly clear, as if right by his ear. The peach blossoms on the mountain bloomed brilliantly, and amidst a grove of peach trees, Sean Pei seemed to see Serena Lu again. She was dressed in fiery red wedding robes, smiling as she held someone else's hand. Sean Pei heard his own heartbeat gradually fade into the wind. A tear fell to the ground, stirring up dust. That person treats her well, and that is good, but he truly regretted it. But it was already too late.